Good morning, a slightly unusual start today. A glorious sunrise in the east shining on a Hammerkop, which Cheryl, Colleen, Ivy and PK pointed out to us was massacring what seemed to be an enormous explosion of eastern olive toads. Now that is the best identification I can give you of the frogs that are in the toads that are in this pan at the moment, because I can't actually see them. All I can see is their little eyes sticking out of the water, and there are couples of them sort of locked in enthusiastic love. Oh no, here comes a couple coming out of the water now. Here we go. Very enthusiastic mating going on. I think these are definitely toads of some sort. I would say that they're eastern olive toads. Anyway, welcome most heartily from me. My name is James and you are with Safari Live, brought to you by WildEarth TV. And on camera today we have Brian, who's about to go on leave, very sadly. Sorry about that, Brian.
Okay, James.
On the other vehicle is Steph, and he is also being accompanied by Andrew, the pack mule. And back in the final control we have Tara Dales on the knob twiddling and Jerry on the tweeting. So please do talk to us. Remember, this is a totally interactive Safari. We want to hear from you, comments and questions to hashtag Safari Live if you're tweeting away, or questions at wildearth.tv if you happen to be on the email. We're just going to stop here briefly further just to show you a little bit more about this pan. It's fascinating stuff. These Hammerkop birds, which the four of you managed to spot, probably many others as well, are hugely famous for their frog-eating habits. They're also very famous for their ability to build the enormous nests that they do, that weigh up to 100 kilograms. These Hammerkop nests weigh. They're kind of very messy masses of all sorts of different things, and if there's any rubbish nearby, they'll often build with human detritus, and inside it is a very thermo-regulated, warm little chamber where the Hammerkop chicks live. And it's an extremely unusual nest, a huge kind of pile of sticks and rubbish weighing up to 100 kilograms. So that is the Hammerkop, and I think that they're either full because they've eaten so many of these frogs, or they're not that keen to get their feet wet. You know, they don't have webbed feet, so they're not swimmers at all. They don't have long legs like storks do, so they tend to stay on the fringes of the water. And as long as the frogs stay away from the shoreline, look at the Hammerkop is now looking to see if he can catch one. As long as the frogs stay away from the shoreline, I think they're probably relatively safe. There were some lions calling earlier, and so thank you for that update. Apparently around here, Steph is further south of us. He has got some lion tracks, so we'll head down there and see if we can help him follow up on some lions. The lions, we obviously didn't do a full drive last night, and after the rain stopped, it was about 5:45 when we had the last major sort of storm that came through. It then did drizzle a bit after that, but major storm then. Those lions, the 5 Birmingham boys that were calling south of us yesterday morning, moved at a great speed, and it sounded like they were going into Arethusa, and they made an enormous noise at sunset, which is very unusual. It's not often that you hear lions calling then. We heard them calling again and again and again as the sun went down. It was really rather magnificent. So we'll see if we can't unravel the story of what happened in the night, either from the road and the tracks that they've left, or possibly more easily from the radio by contacting the other rangers. Oh, Hammerkops moving for the kill. The other creatures of note in this pan are the marsh terrapin. Terrapin, for those of you who don't know, is a freshwater turtle of sorts. different from a tortoise. And the marsh terrapin likes to live in smaller water bodies and puddles like this. So probably a marsh terrapin. Could also be the other species that we get here, called the serrated hinged terrapin. But we wouldn't be able to see them unless we'd actually take them out and look at their carapaces and plastrons, which is the shell. And there are all sorts of beautiful noises around us. There's cuckoos calling, doves, of course, grey-headed sparrows, and obviously the frogs are making an enormous noise, a particularly attractive song. And Anna-Marie, you want to know, and good morning to you, have we heard the hummercup call? No, we haven't heard the hummercup call this morning. They do have a not very attractive call. It's kind of a strident, squawking noise, which I'm not going to try and emulate this early in the morning. But we haven't heard them calling while we've been sitting here, and we've been here now for about 15 minutes, I think. All right, what I suggest you do is keep an eye on the Djuma Dam cam. I'm not sure where the zoomie is going to zoom, but keep an eye on this pan. I think there might be a little bit of interesting action that takes place here. We're going to head south down Twin Dams Road and see if we can't find some lion tracks, and with any luck, some lions at the end of them. Here we go. Ready, Brian? Marvelous. Let's go. Here we go. Good morning, Marla. You say you're impressed that I can hear lions over the sound of those frogs. Marla, they do make an incredible noise, but you're very close to the microphone. Well, the microphone's very close to that pan, and so it's picking up basically only that frog noise, I suspect, or largely that frog noise. We're a little bit further away from it, so we can hear what else is going on, but I imagine listening to the Djuma Dam cam at the moment must just sound like a great chorus of frogs calling. Ooh, there's a big cloud coming. I'm rather hoping that it won't rain this morning, although one mustn't look these blessings sconce, because we do need rain always, as much as we can get normally in this area. This is a pretty thick cloud, so you may have us running for home at some stage, but none of us felt like it was going to rain this morning. We all felt like we were going to have a pretty good day. What do you think, Brian? It's going to hit us.
Most likely.
Most likely. Just going to call Steph on the radio. Go ahead, Steph. He's got an update for us. Okay, copy, thanks, Steph. What is your route? Are you going to just follow the track? Okay, copy that. Yeah, that's cool, Steph. What do you think it's worth my while going north, looking around, or carry on? I'm on Twin Dams. I'm just going to check the truck lines all the way. Right, so it's a single male lion that Steph is tracking, and the tracks are heading towards Buffelshoek Dam. So I think what we're going to do is do an about turn, and Steffi's on foot following them, and he says they're after the last rain. Now the last rain was about 12 o'clock this evening, or 12 to 1. And he says they're on top of that rain, which is good news. Now, rain, of course, affects tracking quite badly. Well, not badly, it just affects it a lot, because the rain clearly washes away the tracks. Then it leaves a kind of soft substrate, and the animals then leave very obvious tracks. But as soon as that dries, it leaves a crust on the road, and then there are very few tracks left. So it does affect the tracking quite a lot. Right, let's drive. We're going to drive a little bit quickly to see if we can't get towards there. Levels of dam. Go ahead. No, never mind. Right, on we go. It's apparently about 18 degrees Celsius. That feels about right to me. And that is about 65 degrees Fahrenheit. So quite a pleasant morning. A little bit chilly. Brian's only got 2 jackets on today. 2 jackets, Brian? Only one. Good heavens. And a buff. Yes, and a buff.
And long pants.
And long pants. Now, yesterday we got lots of great updates from all of you who pay a huge amount of attention, to the cameras, the Arethusa camera, Juma Dam cam, and you also pay attention to the social media of the various lodges around here. And one of the things that popped up was a young male lion at Arethusa yesterday. And Clay, good morning to you. You want to know exactly who it was, who that lion was, and is there any update on it? I didn't get an update on it. I haven't had any further news from Arethusa, but I'm pretty sure that he was one of the lions from the Salala Pride, which consists of 3 young males and 3 females, and I suspect that he was on his own there because the pride was split up by a fight with the Nkahumas yesterday evening. Not yesterday evening, the evening before yesterday. So on Wednesday night. The Nkahumas seem to have reasserting themselves in this area, which I think is excellent news, and they are very interestingly with Junior, with the young male that they're with, and the Birmingham boys have not. If this male line that Steph's following here is a Birmingham boy, I will be quite interested. It might be Junior, except that I think that this lion was roaring, and I don't think Junior would be doing that yet. So, just a brief summary of what's been going on. The Birmingham boys, ooh, that looks like a nasty cloud. That's a pretty vicious grey sky. Anyway, we'll keep going. Fortitude, fortitude. The Birmingham boys have left this area unguarded and unattended for at least, I would say, well, they haven't been back here for about almost a month, I'd say. Now, that means that any other male lion coming into this area is not necessarily going to think that the territory is occupied. And so who this male is walking that Steph's following, I don't know. It'll be quite interesting to see. I think it is opening up the possibility of the Salatis coming down here. The Matimbas, we had a lovely update from Londolozi yesterday, seem to be carving themselves a little niche out of the Majingalan coalition's territory. And that's why we think the Salala Pride has come up here. Because the Majingis, not the Majingis, the Matimbas will not tolerate, of course, the presence of those 3 young male lions in the Salala Pride. So it's all rather interesting at the moment. And I think the easiest way to, or the best way to interpret what's going on is almost to forget everything you've read or learned about lions before. Just observe without judgment of what's going on, and then try to overlay 1 or 2 of the things that you've read or think you know about lions and see if they fit. But the crucial thing is to not start guessing too soon as to what's going on. I've heard some outlandish things over the years of, people making wild suppositions about what they've seen and what they've heard and interpreting things in the most amazing ways. Sometimes they turn out to be correct, but often you just need to watch for a while before we actually try and before we can understand what's going on. But that said, it's enormously fun to try and discover and understand what's happening with the different lion dynamics and all the animal dynamics, really. From, I think, Paul Rizzo. I'm struggling to hear the names. I got it right. I'm amazed. Phew. Hello, Paul. Paul could that lone male be a Solala male? No. You see, if Steph was following the tracks and he'd only seen the tracks, those Solala males are the same size as females now. And I think that he would have said to me, I'm following the tracks of a large female. It's very unusual to have a young male on his own. And I think that he would have said it's a small male. They'll be substantially smaller, those Solala tracks, than those of a big male. It's not impossible, but I think that they'll be substantially smaller than of a big adult. They'll look like lioness tracks. Lovely, lovely fresh morning. Petrichor smells all over the place, and fresh grass popping out of the ground with great enthusiasm, flowers blooming, birds are singing, and an enormous black cloud coming from behind us. And so the tremendous sense of expectation abounds on a morning like this is just so wonderful. And you can almost feel when it switches to that kind of lull that occurs during the middle of the day. And by middle of the day, I mean we're talking middle of the day from about 8:30, 9 o'clock here. As soon as the heat builds. I don't think it's going to get very hot today. Just in line with what I was saying, Sandy Train, you say you don't suggest predicting any animal behavior because as soon as we do, the animals go and do something else. Exactly. It's exactly what tends to happen. I have ended up with much egg on my face over the course of the last few years because of exactly that. Oh, it was a very unfriendly bird. There's a large raptor that's just flown off. I think he is on the flight. Well, there we go. Hang on, we'll just get a quick identification on him. Always good to stop the car every so often, have a listen, especially in the early morning. We might get lions roaring. And I don't know what that is. It's got a strange white head. Perhaps a juvenile fish eagle. Too far away, I'm afraid, for us to get a proper identification on him. Yeah. Okay, we're on to the northern boundary, the Buffelshoek cut line. We're going to head due east towards Buffelshoek, vaguely in the direction of where Steph is heading on the tracks of the line. Here we go. So I was just talking a little bit about the Matimbas and the fact that they seem to be down at Londolozi at the moment. And Clay, you want to know if the one with a bad paw is there? Yes, he is. I don't know what the status of his injury is or how sore he is or whether it's affecting him. I can only think that it isn't affecting him a great deal. Two of them are down carving out a new niche for themselves, having been turfed out of this territory. I think he's absolutely fine, but he's definitely down there. There's not only one of them down. It's not only Hairy Belly, it's Ginger as well. So that's great news for them. I must say I'd like to see them again. I thought they were magnificent lions, those two. Perhaps not the bravest lions I've ever seen in my life, but certainly magnificent. And what's interesting, you know, we say that they've been thrown out of this territory, and we know that lions often do have very violent takeovers of their territories. But what is interesting also is the fact that perhaps, you know, they chose discretion as the better part of valor, and they moved off and went south, perhaps knowing that there was an area into which they could go that, you know, was not very pressurized. So rather than stick around here for no real reason, they've cut their losses and headed into a different area. I think that happens quite a lot. I'm just going to get hold of Steph. Go ahead. Steph is still heading in the same direction towards Bivelshoek Dam. Bivelshoek Dam is, I'm going to be quiet now because we're going to go through a dead signal area. Then I'll talk to you when we're through the other side. Quite astonishing. That's the first time I've been through that hole and there's been no signal breakup at all. Marvellous news. So, the Bivelshoek Dam is about, say, 2 kilometers off in the direction that we're heading, slightly to the south, and then just east of that is the Cheetah Cut Line, which is our eastern boundary. Steph is in sort of to the right-hand side of your screen, say, over there. Probably about 2 kilometers away, heading towards, so we're kind of doing a pincer movement like that, hoping to see if this line is here. I've got a nasty feeling he's crossed east out of the property though. Just simply because those lions, when they're on a mission like that, when they're walking in a straight line, they tend to walk quite large distances. But we might be lucky. We've seen young male lions in their prides. We've seen Junior try to mate with his mother and his sisters, which as human beings we find a little distasteful, or probably quite a lot distasteful. And Donna, you want to know, we've had a long discussion about whether it's possible or how long it's okay for lions to inbreed, and we think it's about 6 generations before they start to show defects. And Donna, you want to know what kind of defects those might manifest as. Donna, I think what you'll find is that there'll be much the same as it would be with people. There'll be cognitive defects where the brain function is not quite what it should be. I think also you'll get strange things like odd numbers of digits, so perhaps six claws instead of the normal 5, and that sort of thing. You'll probably get some fairly abnormal social behavior because of cognitive and brain deficiencies, where animals might be a little bit more aggressive than they would be otherwise, or perhaps a little more docile than they would be otherwise. But there would definitely, I think the first thing that would happen would be some kind of mental deficiency, and then after that, probably, odd numbers of digits, eyes one higher than the other, and ears a bit squonk, that sort of thing. What is that? It's a kudu and not a lion. A little while back or so, in fact probably about a month, or no, less than, a few weeks before the Matimbas were thrown out of this area, we'll just roll forward and have a look at these kudu and just have a listen again. They were seen mating with a Styx female in Kerry in Santa Ana. We don't know if they were pregnant or not, if she was pregnant. It would be about a month probably still before she would give birth. Now what's interesting to me is that if she does give birth, those Birminghams might be conned into believing that they are, that those cubs are theirs, because they came into the area round about the time that she was mated. So that to me is quite interesting. But Kerry, also what's interesting is that we saw, and this is something and I forgot to mention yesterday, we saw when the Birminghams came in here, we saw one male, one female from the Nkuhuma Pride trying to placate them. She tried to mate with all of them. I think she mated with a few different ones, and we're pretty sure that was a false estrus or pseudo-estrus designed by evolution. It's not a conscious decision by the lioness, designed by evolution to basically keep the males placated, keep them in the area, and keep them sweet, as it were, so that the Birminghams killed 3 of that pride. Now, what's very interesting to me is that there has been exactly the same thing apparently going on with the Matimbas and their movement into Londolozi. One of the prides there, the Salala pride is quite a complex arrangement. It's not just those 6 lionesses we had. They tend to come together and then break away from each other, and there are more lions involved. But one of the lionesses there did exactly the same thing. So when the rest of the pride disappeared, exactly like the Nkuhumas did when the Birminghams came in here, one of the lionesses down there, see, I'm just going to roll forward, seems to be mating with one of the Matimbas, almost to placate them again and sort of stop the aggressive behavior that they have towards the new prides, which I think is very interesting. What do you hear? Oh. No. I thought you were saying Tara was trying to get hold of me. Sorry, everybody. We do take our phones on drive, and that's because sometimes the communications go, and also they have our maps on them, and you've got to put them on airplane mode, otherwise they go tickety-tickety-tickety-tickety. You just keep rolling forward, and Brian was hearing that in his ear. And of course he's got these enormous earphones on. Beautiful kudus, these. We haven't even mentioned them, we've just kind of been looking at them and talking about the lions. They're quite a large herd, and just, I hope you're absorbing some of the atmosphere of this morning from wherever you're sitting. It's so fresh, and it is laden with expectation. The air is thick with water. My hands are sticky. Are your hands sticky? With sticky hands from the amount of moisture there is in the air. And there's just such a feeling of almost gratefulness from all the animals out here, it looks to me. Everyone is quite calm and peaceful. And I'm looking at the lens now, and I can see that it's starting to mist up because of just a little bit of heat coming through now with the sun, and that's obviously bringing a lot of the water out. That beautiful bird you can hear is a black-crowned chagra. Unless it's a robin trying to take off a chagra, which is possible. Right, let's carry on. Chatting a little bit about mental deficiencies that could come up in lions after a whole lot of inbreeding. And Virginia in Kentucky, good morning to you. Very good question. Can animals get Down syndrome? I don't know specifically if Down syndrome happens in the same way as it does in human beings. I suspect it probably does sometimes, but remember, out here in the wild, if there is any kind of deficiency that would make an animal physically or mentally less capable than another, it will die almost at birth. So I think it's possible. I think it's certainly would result in almost immediate death, though. So yeah, I've no doubt there are all sorts of different mutations and manifestations of genetic disorders, but normally we don't even see them because the cubs would die, or the cubs or lambs or calves would die at birth. Sometimes in an elephant herd you'll find a deformed calf, say with a squonk leg or something like that, and the elephants will try their best to help raise that calf. And I mean, many years ago down south in the Sabi Sands there was a young elephant cow born with knees that bent seemingly the wrong way, and they were just twisted and bent outwards. And for 4 years or so she kept up with the herd, and they slowed down and they kept with her, and eventually they actually left her because she couldn't keep up anymore. The joints eventually seized up and they couldn't function properly, and a very traumatic event occurred where she was eventually killed by a clan of about 20 hyenas, and that was quite traumatic to watch. But there's just, for the herd to have continued to try and keep with her the whole time would have been totally impossible. So it's quite brutal out here at times, quite brutal. While we sit there listening to that beautiful chagra and absorbing the atmosphere of those kudu, and everything seems at peace, you've got to remember that it can be pretty brutal out here. Right, we're now on the cheated cut line, the far eastern boundary, and we're going to drive slowly down this road and just see if we can't spot a track or two coming across either way. So Steph is off there to the right hand side heading towards us and possibly going to, he should intersect with us, and hopefully he'll intersect with the lion first and then tell us about it. Just going to get hold of him now and find out where he is. Steph, you copy, Steph? Steph, I'm on cheetah cut line now, about 200 meters south of the junction. No tracks yet. I'll just keep driving southbound. Okay, copy that, thanks. Alright, so Steph says, and this is quite good news, that the tracks have turned south. So they're in the block here, and they've turned south of the Bushwick Dam, so he's not just heading due east, which I thought he might be. So we'll keep going very gently down here, watching out for any tracks that there might be. I like to drive down this road like this. Helps me to see what's going on more on the road. So it's of course extremely acrobatic of me to be able to do this. Ooh, hang on. Go ahead. So it's got his tracks. Okay, copy that, thanks. So he does have the tracks now going east. So we're just going to keep going down this road and see if we don't come up with the lion or his tracks. Oh, I think that was them. Hang on a sec. Something went across there. Not a lion. Not sure what it is though. Just a kind of flattening. Possibly a warthog sitting down actually. There's some warthog tracks. And maybe he had a brief rest on the road there. Just bottomed down briefly and then pressed on. We'll carry on down the road. So we're trying to find one of the greatest predators, of course, the world has ever known, the African lion. But Michael, while we're doing that, you would like to know a little bit about the eagles that we get here. How many, where do they nest, when do they breed, etc., etc. Many different eagles here, Michael. I'll give you a list of them. The brown eagles would include the WildEarth eagle, the steppe eagle, the lesser spotted. What else would we have? We have the martial eagle, the African hawk eagle, the fish eagle, the brown snake eagle, the black-breasted snake eagle, the batelier. I think I'm leaving one or two out, even. So those are the main ones anyway. And you want to know where do they mate and when, when is the breeding season? Some elephant tracks on the road here. This is actually the breeding season if they're going to breed here. Now some of them are migratory, many of them are migratory. A tawny eagle, of course, is a very important one. Now is the kind of mating season for those that do mate here. The tawny eagle is resident, and so they will breed round about now. The WildEarth eagles just come back from overseas, and they will breed now. Steppe eagle and lesser spotted have just come back, and they are, certainly the steppe eagle doesn't breed here at all, and so they won't breed here. They'll breed during our winter months up in the Russian steppe. And so those that do breed here will breed now, and it's on a kind of platform of sticks in the trees, and the WildEarth eagle's nests are the most obvious ones for us to see, and so if we see one, I will show it to you. There is one quite close to where we live, and occupied by two very, very attractive and very kind of model couple, really. Two pale-form WildEarth eagles. I must just keep my eyes on the road. I mustn't forget that. Get lost in conversation and stop paying attention to what's going on around here. So if I don't look at you while I'm talking, please do not take offense. I'm not being rude. Just trying to find the lion tracks. This lion is definitely not calling. Steph would have heard him. Steph is, he's on foot, so he would be hearing any kind of noise from this lion. I wonder where his cohorts are. Why he would be alone. No lion tracks yet. Chatted briefly about the fact that these two lionesses were one from the Nkuhuma Pride and one from the Salala Pride, trying to placate new males in the area by mating with them. And Anne in Ohio, you want to know, is it a dominant lioness? Who decides? How does it happen that they decide which lioness is going to go and do the placating job? And I don't know that it's been studied, actually, sufficiently. I've never read about it before. It's only from what I've seen during this current pride takeover that one lioness has detached herself from the pride and gone off to mate with the new males. So I don't know what the cause is or who it is. I would suspect it would be the oldest lioness, but remember there's no... What is that? It's an impala or a Steenbokkie in front of us. I would suspect, Anne, that it's the oldest, but there's no dominance hierarchy amongst lions in the pride. So, it just depends on your size. So I don't really know, to be honest. It's just too gorgeous out here. We're looking probably for a young male lion of some sort here. And Andra Marie thank you for your question. What is the oldest male lion ever found in the wild? Andrew Marie, please just also remember to tell us where you're from. It's so lovely to hear the different parts of the globe that you are sitting on watching Safari Live. Andrew Marie, the oldest lion on record was a Natosha lion aged 16. Now, there are lots of people who will tell you that there were older lions around, but if you dig quite deeply into the stories, they very seldom actually know that is, what the case is. That said, there is some anecdotal evidence that there was two or three 17-year-old lions in the old Sparta Pride, Sparta males down at Londolozi, and we think that they may have lived to 17 years. I'm not entirely sure when they were born. So I would say probably 16 or 17 years is the absolute surest kind of number I can give you. There will be people who will tell you that they've seen 20-year-old and 18-year-old lions. I would treat those as assertions with a great deal of caution. Normally, of course, 10 or 12 is about where they get to. 12 or maybe 13. 13 would be considered a pretty old male lion. In captivity, probably up to 20. But out here, life is tough, as you can see from those timbers. I haven't seen any tracks coming across here, and we're now getting quite close to the southern boundary. We've almost driven the whole of this road. We'll keep going. Badger tracks. Sure you can appreciate the magnificence of that colour that you can see. So we've got it almost stage lit perfectly from the back by the rising sun, which is on our faces, and then the incredible green of the spring vegetation and that magnificent grey cloud above it, almost black. I don't think it's going to rain. I think it's going to be may be famous last words, of course. But we're now right pretty much on the southern boundary. So we'll turn back along the road that goes sort of parallel with this one. Put your heads, everyone. Look. See the hornbill there? He's been fluttering around there for a little while. I wonder if it doesn't have a nest.
I don't know where you're looking at.
Sorry, he's on that knobthorn tree there, the dead one. And I wonder if he doesn't have a nest there. He's flying towards us. Oh yeah, I caught him in the corner of my eye, flitting about on that knobthorn. I wonder if there isn't a nest there. So you see the knobthorn trees, well, lots of dead trees, of course, get funguses in their heartwoods that create holes for hornbills to get into. Go ahead, Steph. Steph's just calling me on the radio. Okay, copy that. Yeah, I've driven cheetah cutline. I mean, I'm live, but I'm pretty sure that he hasn't crossed here. I'm going to come back up Leadwood and then Drakensberger Road. Steph is on the tracks. You can still see them. And they're heading south. He is heading towards the cheetah cutline. I wonder... Okay, I think let's turn around and then we'll go up. There's a little road just to the behind us, and we'll head up there and see if we can't pick him up. it is well possible, when I just turn around quickly to look at the camera, we may have missed the tracks going across the road. That's not okay. I shan't beat myself up about it too much. Here comes a bit of rain, yeah. There is a bit of a few dripples coming out of the sky. We'll head away from it now. Watch your heads, everybody. And then we had that lovely question from Michael about the eagles and when they breed. And earlier on in the year, we were watching vultures nest on Arethusa, and they certainly seem to be breeding during the winter. And vultures, yes, they will breed during the winter time. Lisa, I think that fledgling that we saw in that nest is probably fledged and gone off on his own. Vultures, not particularly seasonal breeders. No birds really have to be seasonal breeders, but obviously the more food there is around, the easier it is for them to breed. The vultures don't really worry too much about the seasonality. So, I'm just going to give you a quick picture of where Steph is so that you can be included in the tracking experience. He is now north of us, and the tracks, he's come through these blocks. Okay, now when that lion is on the road, he's pretty easy to follow because he's heavy. It's about 180 kilograms, and that is times 2.2, well, roughly say just over 400 pounds. So he will leave quite obvious marks. But when he walks off the road and through the block like this, they become very difficult to follow, of course, unless there's very fresh rain, so you can actually see where they've moved the grass, and then on the odd sandy patch. And that's where you need a truly experienced specialist tracker, because they're able to then follow those tracks. Anyway, we're chatting about the age of lions, and Dee, you want to know what is the oldest, or what is the potentially oldest big cat that we get here? Well, I mean, there are only two real big cats, well, three big cats that we get here, the cheetah, the lion, and the leopard. And potentially the leopard is the longest lived. Although that said, I mean, the oldest recorded female leopard here was the 3-4 female at Londo's, and she was 17. Not much different from the oldest recorded male lion. So probably potentially fairly similar. I think if you kept lions and leopards in captivity, though, the leopards would be very slightly longer. Cheetahs probably quite similar, you know. In the wild, I would say probably fairly similar ages. So, I wonder in captivity who would last longer. I think you could probably say that they all last roughly 20 years. There's no obvious kind of difference. Brian is just going to clean the lens. Running at high speed. Steph is just down here. I think they were just running because the sun's out. They're not alarm calling, so I don't think they're in any kind of genuine distress. So Steph's just up ahead here. I've got a nasty suspicion we missed the tracks going, I'm not going to blame you, I will take responsibility for that. I've got a nasty suspicion we missed them going east into Torture, which is the reserve to the east of us. Barbara, lovely question on a lovely morning. Are the big cats, or is there a difference between lifespan of big cats and small cats out here, as there is with domestic animals? Barbara, there is, but I don't think the way that you perhaps are thinking. I think the smaller cats don't last as long as the big cats out here. I think that the average lifespan of an African wildcat, of course, which is eventually what became all of the cat breeds around the world, I think their potential lifespan is probably no more than 6 or 7 years, maybe up to 10. And of course, because they're so secretive in the wild, it's very difficult to actually tell. It's not like with the lions where you can follow them from cubs to adulthood. There've been plenty of these cats raised in captivity in rehabilitation centres and those sorts of things. I think these tracks have crossed out. Never mind. And so the servals, caracals, and the small cats, I think you'll find substantially less than the bigger ones here. On the same subject of age, Marianne in Texas, your question is, do they does the rule which applies to, or the rule of thumb which applies to domestic dogs, sort of 7 dog years to 1 human year, apply out here? No, I think it's probably a variation of that. That's not so much a rule as it is a way of helping us understand how dogs age. So for a lion, I would say, probably about the same. For a smaller cat, I'd probably say it's probably maybe 10 human years to 1 cat year. That would probably be about accurate. There's some elephants up ahead there. Beautiful. So, remember that the average human lifespan is a lot larger now than it was in prehistory. And lions don't live into old age like our dogs do. Our dogs, because they are looked after by vets and us, and they have cushy lives, we find that they live longer than they would in the wild. So that 7-year kind of rule, I think you can only really apply it to domestic animals. I'm just going to quickly tell Steph that we've got elephants here so he can keep following the lion tracks. He's not far from us. Steph, we've got a herd of elephants here on Drakensberger about 400 meters to the south of the junction with Gwari Pan. We'll just sit with them for a while, and will you just keep us updated on those tracks? It sounds like those tracks have crossed over. Yeah. Okay, copy that. Yeah, I definitely was not looking at the road at that junction. Sorry about that. So he has gone east. I'm afraid that lion straight into Torchwood. Apparently very, very fresh right now. We probably missed him by a minute or two. So where the rest of the lions are, nobody knows, and the radio's been very quiet today. Anyway, let's go a little bit forward and see if we can't get a slightly better view of these elephants reveling in the new dawn light. we don't want to do is frighten them. And you can see I've already done that by starting the engine, so I think we'll be very cautious about moving forward. We want to create a bond of trust between us and them, so that eventually the elephants of this area will not react to our presence at all. We're getting there. It's got a lot better. I mean, in the year 2000, when I started as a guide, as I've said to you before, we didn't go into an elephant sighting unless we had a forward escape route. You kept your hand on the ignition key because the elephants were so irritated generally with human beings. And that situation is better than it was. We still are very respectful, very careful, very observant about how the elephants are feeling. We watch their behavior. But in general, they tend to be a lot more relaxed than they were. And that was no better illustrated than it was when you watched on Friday last week, exactly a week ago. We watched a young, tiny elephant calf and her mother, and they came so close to us without paying any attention to us at all, which was just wonderful. They're feeding very quietly, and you can just hear it's so amazing. As the sun comes out, the birds go crazy after a night of rain. Robins calling, chagras, doves, sparrows, something called a Steerling's wren warbler, the ubiquitous and very stridently loud francolin. You might be able to hear that Steerling's wren warbler going tick, 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 tick. Marvellous sounds, those. So what we do there, in case you wondered why suddenly you could hear so much more, is that when we want to listen to the birds, Tara just flicks up the volume a bit, and now we are back to normal, so I can talk to you in a normal voice. So this is quite a young cow, and that kind of, you've watched her there do that sort of sloping walk. That kind of, she had sort of, well, I think that's her calf. Look, so vicious. What a big boy. He's kind of play fighting with us now. Testing himself, seeing if he can make us run away. And now we haven't moved, you see, so now he's feeling a little bit less sure of himself. Isn't he sweet? Look at him. You can see him crossing his feet like that. That's a very common thing with elephants that are feeling slightly socially awkward, just like with people. There he goes. So sweet. And he's just enjoying this. This is entertainment for him. Now what the cow did when she came across the road, it was kind of, when males do it, we call it almost a must swagger, when they kind of swagger across the road, and all it is it's a slight warning behavior that says, listen, I'm watching you, and I'm watching you quite carefully. I'm okay with you, but just don't push it. Now, this little fellow is now trying a different angle, and now he's feeling embarrassed, so he's going to pretend to be eating. just learn to use his trunk properly. I think there's some others up ahead and to the left, but I doubt it's just these three. But that little chap, perfectly framed by the bushes and lit by the sun. It's just wonderful. Look at how dexterous that little trunk is, even at that age. Picking up little pieces of individual grass that he wants. The elephants will be very happy now that they're able to feed on the grass, because they'd rather eat grass than this heavy, woody material that they've been eating for the last few months. And now with a bit of rain, they'll get a lovely flush on the grass. This cow is probably about 20, and I suspect that the youngster is her first. She's not nearly as big as she's going to get. Oh, and we've been watching these trees taking an awful hammering over the last little while, and that has not ceased. So that's a young knobthorn tree, and she's going for the roots of it now. And the fresh shoots, of course. Nasty, nasty thorns on it. But not for elephants. They don't really seem to feel them, nor do any of the animals out here. I've seen squirrels and monkeys running around in knobthorn trees amongst thorns that you and I wouldn't put our hands near because they'd be ripped to shreds. So she is sitting about, probably only about 4 meters from the car, which is fantastic, about 12 feet, if that, probably a bit less. Just having her morning constitutional in front of us, very unembarrassedly. Oh, lovely, you can hear the thud of the fresh dung, which after the rain we've had now, and after the warmth that is developing today, I think is going to result in a huge number of dung beetles coming out in swarms. Elephant. That little elephant is now only 2 meters from us. Many of you will know of the existence of a calf known as a wrinkly bottom because of his wrinkly bottom and wrinkly skin. And Nancy and Lauren, this is not wrinkly bottom. This is a fairly standard issue elephant calf, very beautiful, better skin than wrinkly bottom. I don't know where wrinkly bottom is. I haven't seen him for a while. Brian, have you seen him for a while? No. Brian also can't recall seeing him for the last little while. I know Brent had him not too long ago, but I haven't seen him for a while. Elephants, are not, they're totally unterritorial. So while they will often move in similar areas, sometimes they move off and disappear for months on end. And I was just describing that tiny little baby elephant that we saw yesterday, or last Friday. I'm not going to move back. We will disturb them, so unfortunately you're going to have to deal with the picture that you have of the aerial. Sorry about that. That's my fault. Elise, we haven't seen that little elephant again, and thank you. It was indeed my birthday elephant, and I haven't seen him again. I think they're around Arathusa and Elephant Plains. I think that's where that herd is at the moment. Now this young elephant is probably rising too, so almost 2 years old, I would say. And Barbara, you want to know when they stop suckling? Round about 2, up to 4. You know, they kind of will keep drinking a little bit until they're probably about 3 or 4 years old. But so this one will definitely be still suckling, but also moving on to solids, as it were. Probably, well, they'll start eating leaves fairly soon on, as soon as their trunks are capable of being used to pick bits of leaves, but that youngster will still be suckling a little bit. I'm going to attempt to move back very slightly. I just think that they may react to us. But if not, well, that's great. See, the sound of a car is almost challenging to elephants. So the big thing, if you ever come out here, look at that sweet little thing. If you ever come out here and you can drive around the Kruger Park on your own, nobody was going to give you too much in the way of instruction as to how to react when you see an elephant. The big thing is to understand that an elephant, if it gets close enough to you, often they're coming just to investigate and have a look. I mean, if they're charging at you, you know exactly what they're saying. They're saying, back off and go away and don't come close. But once they get to within a certain distance and they're investigating you, the worst thing you can do is fire up the engine, because the engine, of course, is noisy. And often elephants will interpret that as a challenge, which you don't really want. You don't want to be challenging an elephant at all. So we were just chatting a little bit there about the protocol of cars around elephants, and look at that little thing. He's entertaining himself. He's close. He's about a meter from Brian there. Terry in Santa Ana, you want to know about the difference between our protocol of driving around elephants and walking around them. The difference, Terry, is obviously enormous. The main difference, of course, is the distance to which you can go to elephants. Brian, let's snip a bit forward. I think there are a couple more in front there that might be a little bit easier for you. In vehicles, you can obviously get closer, and it's because the animals don't react to us in the same way. So they don't see us as a huge threat in the vehicle once they've got used to the vehicles. On foot, however, if we were to get out of the car here, they'd have a very adverse reaction. They'd run away or run towards us, which of course would be deeply terrifying. And that's because they see us as predators on foot, and in the vehicle, they just don't perceive us in the same way at all. So it is very different. We can get much closer in the car than we would ever get on foot. There's another little one through there. Let's drive off-road slightly here. It looks like there's a bit of a track. These guys are going into some thick bush, so I'm not going to follow them. I'm going to go back to the other ones. And just a lot of you commenting on how you love that little baby elephant attitude. I think he's got a wonderful attitude. It's very, you don't want him to have that attitude when he's a big bull, though. But I don't think he'll have that beaten out of him by the bigger bulls when he gets too large. And Dara in Ohio, you say this little baby has made your week. It's been a tough week for you. I'm sorry about that. You probably come and work out here. It doesn't get particularly tough. We love it out here. It's just rather amazing that this is my job. Dara, I hope that your weekend improves, and I'm glad that we could end your week with a bit of a highlight here. Stop here. Now, we're looking at a little elephant who's probably, or the bottom thereof, she's probably about 2 years old, and just under 2, I think. And Sandy, you want to know, they're born with teeth. Sandy, they are not born with teeth. The teeth come out pretty soon, but they're not born with teeth. And they do have milk teeth, they have milk tusks, which will come out and then fall out. And then they get their permanent teeth, I think pretty much, probably about 5 years old, I think. Not entirely sure, but they're definitely not born with teeth, as far as I'm aware. Now, there's an interesting thing that happens with all herbivores, of course, and that is that none of them produce the enzymes required to digest the. Sorry, I'm just taking my jacket off. To digest the structural material in plants, so the cellulose and the lignin that comes in plants. Very few animals actually have the necessary enzymes to digest that stuff. And I think what's interesting is that how they get those bacteria into their stomachs. And what they do is often they will eat the dung of another animal, and that lines the stomach. And we did have a question about, is it true that young elephants will eat their mother's dung in order to... You can hear her calling there. I don't know if you can hear that or not. So the question was from Carol in Florida, and Carol, they don't eat dung in order to get antibiotics, no. They do it in quite the opposite way. They do it to absorb the bacteria into the gut. And they probably don't need to eat a huge amount, but certainly they're not born with that bacteria in the hind gut. And without that bacteria, there's no ways that they will be able to digest the plant material, huge amounts of plant material that they'll have to as adult elephants. You know why this cow is calling? She's making, I don't know if you can hear it there, a low rumbling sound. And I think she's making it because the wind is coming gently from the east. So it's coming just over our shoulders and into her. And the smell of our humanness is making her slightly uncomfortable, and she's calling her calf and just saying to the calf, let's move away a little bit. They just don't perceive us in the same way in the vehicles. Although now the wind's blowing slightly the other way. Here comes this one here. And as Paul has rightly pointed out, thank you Paul, she does seem to be keeping a close eye on her baby. Elephants are fantastic parents. They are very aware always of where their youngsters are. You'll find that the entire herd, which is around here, is probably very aware of exactly, or very aware of where all the others in the herd are. And so they are absolutely brilliant parents, and she'll be completely aware of where that little calf is. And the calf has now gone to join her. I'll sneak a little bit forward, and we'll give it a look. quick look here, and then we might go off towards the western side and see if we can't pick up on some other lion tracks. They're hiding a little bit there. There are a whole lot more in front of us. It's quite a big herd of elephants. Yeah, the little one's been told to stop playing with the humans, get on with the business of having breakfast, which will lead straight into brunch, in turn lead straight into lunch, tea and supper. I'm just laughing there because I dived out of the way to get out of the way of the cameras that came past. And you possibly thought the car was being driven by a ghost. Forgotten entirely what I was going to say now. Never mind. Something else will come to me. There, you can hear them all calling now. They might be deciding that it's time to go and have a drink. And when that happens, it's a fascinating thing to see. It would be a slightly odd time for them to do it, but it might happen. The matriarch will normally make a call. They will stop moving. Oh, there are two big bulls there at the back. It's a large bull, that. The matriarch will make a call. She'll make a kind of low rumbling noise. Everyone will stop eating and then they'll just move off towards the water. It's an amazing thing to see. I think that's a bull. No, it's not. It's a cow with big tusks. Huge herd of elephants. I mean, they really are. They're on all sides of us. I'd say there are probably at least 30 animals here. All of the communications coming from that young cow, I can just hear her. She's off to our right hand side, the one that we were watching with her calf, and she's talking constantly to him. And I think that while that youngster there is feeding, he's definitely interested in seeing us. And I think sometimes, with these guys here have grown up completely in the absence of any kind of aggression from human beings. Now remember, up until 1996, they used to cull elephants in the Kruger National Park, and that's what made them so sort of generally irritated with people, and that's why it took so long afterwards to regain their trust to a certain extent. And these youngsters, excuse me, bug flying in my throat. These youngsters have grown up without any of that. So I've no doubt that they have been communicated to by their parents about the dangers of human beings, but they're generally just a little bit more chilled out than the really old elephants in the area. And we often have questions about elephants' memories and whether they can remember. I don't think they forget anything, to be honest. I think if they have a bad experience, they definitely remember it, and it takes a long time for them to, if they have a traumatic experience, it takes a long time for them to get over that. I'm just going to wait here and see what plays out. There's quite a lot going on in front of us, and I don't want to affect it by moving forward. There's a very substantial cow there. I thought she was a bull, she's so big. Going across the road with a tiny little one. Okay, now I think we can probably sneak forward without creating any consternation. Let's do that. Now Now, you may have noticed as we got very close to that little one just now, maybe you noticed the colour of his eye. And Marianne in Arkansas, you say elephants' eyes very often look red. Are they red? Marianne, they're not so much red as a kind of honey-coloured orange. But yes, definitely there is a red colour to them. There's a red element to them. Just going to sneak slowly down this road. There is a tiny little elephant in front of us. But I don't want to threaten them, like I've said before. I just want them to be totally comfortable with our presence. The sooner we can turn the engine off, the better. Two young bulls having a little rumpus. That is a vast cow up front. She is huge. Absolutely huge. Her baby is not huge at all. The baby's tiny. Probably only about 2 feet off the ground. And those are two young boys. And they will test each other constantly. Just like two young human boys would. It's so similar. The more I watch elephants, the more similar they are to human behavior, I feel. Right, let me just sneak in a little bit further forward so we can get a look at these ones to the right-hand side. This fella is just resting his leg, or was. I'm going to find out quickly from Ephraim I'm just listening to the radio. There are reports of lions quite close to Arethusa, and I think it might be worth going that way. Ephraim, can you go with the position of that sighting that you had? Ephraim? Ephraim, do you copy Ephraim? Good morning, F. Can you just go with the position of that sighting you had? No. All right, I think that we need to leave these elephants now. I'll tell you why. There are 4 Birmingham males in Arethusa, but we haven't seen them for some time. We're quite a long way from there. What's interesting is thanks very much, F. He found the lion that Steph was tracking just across the boundary here in Torchwood. I think it probably is a Birmingham male because there are only 4 of them down in Arethusa. So we're going to go that way. Yeah, copy, thanks very much, F. We'll head towards Arethusa now. Let's go and see if we can't find those other 4 lions. Marvellous, and apparently they're heading this way, which is good news. Okay, on we go. Wonderful elephant sighting. Thank you, elephant. We'll just head out here. We just don't see those Birmingham males very often, and I would like to see how they've grown, if they have grown at all. So we'll drive relatively quickly. Not just yet, because of course that enormous cow elephant with her baby are not far from here. We don't want to go past them and create consternation. Another youngster coming across the road. There we go. Through. Just elephants dotted all over here. It's so wonderful. All right, on we go. Let's go and see what those lions look like. They still look like lions. I'm going to go onto the boundary and then around on the boundary roads because they're a bit straighter. We won't be weaving around the place. You guys won't get seasick and Brian won't have to hang on for dear life. Heads. So I spoke a little bit earlier about the smell that the elephant smelling us and the wind turning and blowing into the elephant and picking up our smell. And Barbara, you want to know, do we take any special precautions so that they don't smell us? Perhaps using a special kind of soap. Barbara, we don't use any special kind of soap. Some of us don't use any soap at all, but that's a discussion for another time. We use normal soap entirely. You do hear these stories of old hunters covering themselves in elephant dung so that they wouldn't be smelled by the animals. There's no necessity for that. We are very aware, though, especially on foot, as to where the wind's coming from. And certainly Scott and I, when we walk, we carry that sock filled with ash, and we walk along and shake it, especially if we think there are animals around. We'll shake the sock, and it'll show us where the wind's blowing, and we'll try always to be downwind of animals rather than upwind of them, especially the bigger animals like elephants, which will become very threatened by the smell of human beings. But no, we don't worry too much about that. Kachino John, you say the boys are back in town? Well, we hope so. We're not there yet. And X-Ranger, can't say this is the first time I've heard someone say this. Certainly the first time on Safari Live, though. You say, woohoo, home James, and don't spare the horses. I shan't spare any of the horses, nor the Jiga. Can anyone actually tell me where that expression comes from? Home James and don't spare the horses. I'd be fascinated to know. Oh dear, here comes a vehicle. There's going to be a great conflagration of traffic. I think we're going to just ungentlemanly pull ahead in front of them. Oh yeah! I've got more guests than he does. He's only got 6. That's Ephraim, and he's been looking at that lion in Torchwood just to the east of us here. I think his guests are going home early today. So if it does get a bit wobbly and the trees start flying by, it's because we are driving a little bit quicker to get to Arathusa. I don't know where they're going to go, those lions, and I think they're quite close to the kind of southern boundary, so we need to get there as quick as possible, within reason. A very concerned and kind question from Donna, who says, do I get salt being bounced around in the vehicle daily? There are 2 aspects to this question that are interesting. The first is that you obviously only see me in front of the camera. The people that take the most hits from the driving back are the cameramen. They are on a kind of, watch your heads here, bench seat at the back, and they sit right above the sort of rear axle, and so they get thrown about far more than we do. And I think, Brian, I mean, sometimes you guys do get stiff and sore from driving around. especially if we have something like a wild dog sighting and we're driving very fast and throwing the car from side to side. There's nothing, there's nothing breaking their movement from side to side. So I think they get very strong core muscles from doing the work that they do. So Donna, yes, I'd like to tell you that my life was dreadfully tough and we get sore from being thrown around in the vehicles. But no, the cameramen are the guys who take the real hit from these herring around fast to sightings. But they're okay. They get by.
Yeah, we try.
We try. Brian's going on leave, so he's
driving.
You're not on leave yet, Brian. I found a Sisyphus tree for you yet. Just keep an eye out for the tracks as we go. Okay. Well, I just missed a question there, but I've got it now. Mike, you want to know which plants are used as painkillers out here? Apparently the Gymnosporia senegalensis, or the common red spike thorn, is pretty good. I know Brent's tried it, and I know we've both tried it, but he was the guinea pig, and he took a whole lot more into his mouth than I did, and he chewed it up and then spat it out, and apparently his gums and tongue went pretty numb for a while, and so that's a pretty good one for pain killing. There are not huge numbers of great analgesics out here. I know that Sisyphus or buffalo thorn is used as a kind of curative for any injuries and supposed to have a mild anti-inflammatory effect. When Andrew bashed his head the other day, I forget how he did it. Do you remember how he did it?
Yeah, he walked into a pole at 5 in the morning.
Yes, he walked into a pole. That's right. I remember not being particularly sympathetic and laughing heartily at it. He walked into a pole. Anyway, we put some Sisyphus on his forehead. He said it did make a sort of tingling feeling, and so maybe it was doing some healing. To say it reduced the throbbing pain a great deal. So not a lot. I mean, you do get mild narcotics out here, like the wild ducker, which is a kind of an annual plant with beautiful red flowers. Apparently you can have a go at the roots there, and that'll give you a mild narcotic effect, which probably also will reduce pain. And likewise, one of the plants that they eat in East Africa quite a lot and up into the Middle East is a plant called Catha edulus, or cut, Khat, and you can find that sometimes here. It's a slightly different variation, but if you chew that, I imagine if you were in a lot of distress, it might reduce that slightly. So otherwise, not a great deal of discipline lurking around. That said, some of the bark apparently has what they call, I think, salicylic acid. Some of the bark of various trees out here, which is an active ingredient in aspirin. And so if you knew how to extract it and you had a chemistry kit, you could probably make yourself an analgesic. But I think there are very few plants out here that you can just chew to feel better. We're not too far now from the Arathusa boundary, and we'll get an update as soon as we get there as to where these lions have gone. The vehicle is still behind us, so we're going to drive a little bit faster. Now Jigger, as many of you will know, has just come back from hospital. Jigger is this vehicle that we drive, a deeply aging lady, and her steering box seems to be fixed, which is marvellous. She used to, it's quite an art to drive at this sort of speed along a road like this, because she would suddenly decide that she wanted to go south or north and you'd have to correct without swinging the back out. And she's certainly listing a little bit port and starboard as she does, but not anything like as badly as she was. Just going to try and call these guys in Cruiser now to see if I can't get an update. Station Arethusa, do you copy? Stop here. I'm going to let Ephraim go past us. His radio is functioning a bit better, and I know he's got some guests with him who probably want to see those lions. So let's just stop. We've got a bit more time than they do. I'm going to stop here, let him go past, and get an update from him, and he can then tell us what's going on. Let me just stop here and try and get an update from him. He's coming past us now, because it's pointless us just kind of driving in there and bungling about if we can't hear what's going on the radio. It's very embarrassing driving into a sighting and not knowing what's happening. Let's just try and get him to stop. Aye, iko minjani? Tingala tikwi. Okay. Tingenile la. Okay. Utativona.
Yeah, the power line.
Okay. Na radio yame aitiri gachi. Guna vangat kwala. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Double lands away.
All right.
Okay. Right, so Ephraim will go in there. He's got a better radio. He'll be able to tell us how many cars there are there. We're just going to drive slowly in there for now. They're not far from where we want to. They're not far from the boundary, and they're also not too far south. So I think we've probably got a good chance of seeing them. So I don't think we're going to rush. Because what I don't want to happen is for us to go in there and have to then leave immediately because there's a whole lot of other vehicles trying to get in there. So let's just take a leisurely jaunt along the road. Yeah. So lots of comments on the where Home James Don't Spare the Horses comes from. Lisa, I think you said it was Clint Eastwood. We've had votes for John Wayne. But I'm not convinced that those... So Jeffrey and Austin and RC and X-Ranga, you've come up with a solution to this question, and apparently there was a myth or an apocryphal story, if you like, that Queen Victoria had a coachman at one stage called James Darling, and she couldn't call him Mr. Darling, and so she used to call him James. And sorry about the road. I thought it had an English origin, and apparently she used to then say, Home James, don't spare the horses. Apparently that is a myth though, and that coachmen since the 1600s in Britain had been called James because the aristocracy were too bone idle to learn their real names. So there it is, Home James, don't spare the horses. Quite nice to attribute to the great white queen, Victoria. Right. Stefan Winterboer, the great naturalist, is now on foot. He's forgiven us for driving over his lion tracks. He's on foot with an interesting bird. While we go to these lions, you go across to him and I'll see you just now.
Well, good morning. It's been quite an epic morning for myself and Andrew. We're off here. All right. Please excuse me, I thought that we were off air over there and things are going crazy here this morning. But good morning from myself and Andrew. We've been on foot tracking a male lion this morning. And what started off as we had absolutely no signal, we ended up a good 1.5 kilometers away from where we started. But nevertheless, let's get the bushwalk on the go this morning. And the first thing that we're going to show you is an African, we had to show you, was an African cuckoo. Alright, so my African cuckoo flew away. What a pity, but nevertheless, I have got something else that I wanted to show you over here. Something that I found, literally, could anything more go wrong with my walk at the moment? It's the largest ant that we actually find over here, barring a robber ant. So there's just 2 of these guys. They're like so difficult to lose in actual fact because they're about 1 inch long. Let's have a look. He's not under here somewhere. Busy hunting inside here. Andrew's chasing away all my stuff that I wanted to show you here today. Anyway, let's not dwell around too much with what we've lost and go and look for something more. Come with me. What actually drew me to this tree was the fact that I found a violet-backed starling pair. Now, this time of the year, they've come in all the way from the DRC, the Central Equatorial Africa, and they are looking for holes in trees to nest in. And I think that this pair is trying to nest in this tree. And what I want to do is see if I can find them for you so that I can show you how pretty this bird is. Easily one of the prettiest birds that we have out here. And let me see if we can see him in the tree over here now. As we stopped, I was watching the female was silhouetted against the sky. And they seem to have moved on. How's that for luck? Shows you karma. I mean, one of those things. Male lions that are walking away from us, birds that are flying away from us, ants that I can't find right in the open. Anyway, let's move to a different area. Come with. So you'll notice, for those of you who are joining the walk for the first time, that I do have a rifle. I carry it with me. It's a tool of the trade, so to say. It's basically just a piece of safety equipment. Nothing to concern yourselves over. Myself and Andrew, the last thing that we want to do is get into a position where we actually have to injure ourselves or an animal. It's not what we want to do. We're just out here to enjoy the bush, enjoy being out on foot, enjoy the peace and quiet that comes with being on foot in a beautiful place like this. And we've come into a new area for the walk actually. Oh yeah, we've got a road, and on the road is a hyena track. And I know that it's a hyena track because of the size difference between the front foot and the back foot. This is and also you can't really see from where you are, but the nails and the back of the pad definitely are not cat-like. When you have a cat, the back of the pad, you'll be able to put a grass blade on and the track will be basically a perpendicular track. Dogs, cats, or dogs at least anyway, have a track that is slightly skewed to their direction of travel. So cat tracks, if you put a piece of grass on the back of the track, let me show you what I mean by using this track here. Let me just go fetch a piece of grass quickly. I'll come back into your shot now. So if you put a piece of grass on the back of the track, you can see there, you can see if I take another stick and put it in the direction of travel, you get this picture. If it was a cat track and you put it at the back of the track, it would be straight and the direction of travel would be like that, using a stick. Something more like this. So that's how I know it's a hyena without too much detail. Now hyenas here, the more common of the one is the spotted hyena that we find here. They have outcompeted the brown hyena in the Kruger National Park. People have a variety of different theories about it. The more commonly held theory is that because of artificial dams and pans, brown hyena were outcompeted by spotted hyena, who, well, this brown hyena is an arid area specialist. So in arid areas where Kruger National Park used to put pans, now spotted hyena could come there. Spotted hyena outcompete brown hyena in those areas. Brown hyena had to move on and move to the mountains. They occur fairly close to here, just outside the reserve in actual fact. I'd say probably the closest brown hyena den that I know of is about 30 or 40 kilometers, 30 or 25 miles from here. And is an animal that has eluded me in an almost 20-year career. I've never seen a brown hyena, even though I've tried to work in areas even that have brown hyena present. So it is still one of those things that I have yet to see. I'm just going to move this branch out of the way. An elephant. Oh, here we go. There's a hippopotamus track. Now, there's a hippopotamus foot. I know it's a hippo and not anything. I know it's a hippo and not a rhino, who would have a similarly sized foot, because a rhino has 3 toes and this hippo has 4. There's one there, one there, one there, one there, and the back of the foot here. You have a hippo. A lion, even a big male lion, his tracks would be fitting inside there for the biggest male lion, about as big as my hand. So that's a big male track is about as big as my hand, like that. That's his front foot. His back foot will be about that big. And that's what Andrew and I have been tracking the whole morning, is lion. And Barbara has asked, isn't it dangerous tracking lion on foot? Barbara, yes, it is actually quite dangerous tracking lion on foot. Myself and Andrew had to take it quite carefully through some thick bush areas. What you want to try and do is you want to try and keep your head up the whole time. One of the tricks to tracking is to keep your head up when the whole body is just wanting you to look at the floor and find that next footprint. You've got to keep your head up, and that'll allow you to scan the bush in front of you, look for places where tracks are most likely to be found. You walk there, you have a look at a track, and then you carry on. And that'll allow you also to see these animals that are lying up in shade and lying up underneath bushes. And hopefully allow you to avoid any potential issues. Now, I've been walking on this road a little bit. I just wanted to get into this area here. I think it's a good time for us to walk into the bush. That's exactly what we're here to do, and that's exactly what I feel like doing. This area is well known for its massive termite mounds. And termite mounds, apart from being little universes all of their own, actually attract a lot of animals. They have good species, or healthy species of grass that grow on them this time of the year. That obviously in turn attracts a lot of animals that eat grass, which in turn attracts the predators that eat those animals. And quite often you would have witnessed, for those of you who watch the show often, and I know a lot of you do, that quite often you find leopard lying on top of termite mounds. They're waiting there for animals to come and feed up onto the side of these termite mounds, onto the side of these what we call nutrient hotspots. That's what a termite mound actually is. And then they catch them. Now, we're walking around near the crest, and as you can see, we've got a lot of terminalias. This wood here, we have a millipede here, is a very hard wood. You can see, even though it's dead, it's almost impervious to termites, and therefore is used quite often to build houses with and to build kraals with. And on this particular tree, we've got a millipede. See, I'm just getting him. He's busy sucking up some detritus or something that's being caught right up in that little hollow there. They're not carnivorous, they eat detritus, and that means that they eat like compost. And these are the guys, they're like little locomotives. I absolutely love them. They get a little bit bigger than this. As the season goes by, we start seeing other species with black and white stripes on. We've even seen some that are red in color. You have ones that don't have these orangey legs, they've got black legs. You can see, quite ticklish. Well, look at the way he's... It's like me, I have a very ticklish back as well.
It's because it's hairy, Steve.
Yeah. Now, something that I did the other day that was actually fascinating was show you how this insect sees the world around it, and it was quite an epiphany for me, actually. This animal uses those antennae that you see at the end of his head to feel out and taste the area around them. Now what I've done is I've actually licked to the end of this piece of grass. Ooh, I've got a very persistent fly. Myself and Andrew are being plagued by them. And what we're going to do is try and get him to taste this. Have a look there. No, he's not wanting to play game today. Always decided that my brand of toothpaste is not conducive to. See how he's busy tasting with those antennae of his, moving his head in that direction. They are like his eyes. Look at that. Epic. And with that, he's busy tasting to see if there's anything there to eat. And have a look. He's zoned in his face. Antennae have gone right to his mouth so that his mouth can find what his antennae have. And I mean, to be honest with you, it's something that's actually incredible to think that they use an appendage like that to see and to generate a picture in their brains of the world around them, similar to how we use our eyes and our hands and our feet. Imagine if you could take your hand and you could feel here for something to eat. You know, using it, feeling all these crenellations there. I've got something quite soft. Is that something to eat? I'd have to be able to taste with my finger to actually see what's going on, and then to carry on going up here feeling, where am I going to find the next one, next morsel? I just find it fascinating, these things. Anyway, let's carry on going. So the next thing I want to go and head out towards is that fallen down tree there. They can sometimes be sources of interest because you get a whole bunch of things that like to eat around fallen down logs, the wood itself, all the grubs that the wood generate. It's a good hiding place for trees and for listen to what I'm saying. It's a good hiding place for snakes. So this is a fallen down marula. And there are lots of little hidey holes. Oh, rotten, rotten, rotten. Have a look at this. This was once so hard you couldn't stick your finger into it. And now I can push my finger into this wood. Which means that it's had a long time for all these insects that dig these holes to eat the wood. Not a lot of nutrition in wood, as you can imagine. And so what happens is you get lots of grubs living for long periods of time. Oh, here we go, 2 different species of millipede here. Here's that zebra millipede I was telling you about. They're busy eating some wood as well, or some fungus that's growing on this wood. And from millipedes eating fungus to some buffalo drinking some water. James has found something to show you, and so we're going to go over to James and we'll catch up with you when we've got something interesting to show you again. Ciao.
So, an interesting question from Sandra has precipitated you coming across to look at these buffalo drinking out of a puddle. And Sandra, you wanted to know if the animals take advantage of puddles so that they don't have to keep walking to water. There is your answer right there. Yes, they do. And that's often why the herds split up so much during the summer months when there's lots of water around. The herds will split up, elephants and buffalo, because there is so much water in these sort of temporary pans and puddles that we find throughout the bush. You can also see the oxpeckers that have been bathing in the puddle with their kind of buffalo hosts. Lovely sighting here. And they're pretty much denuded that puddle of water, and they're now going to carry on and eat. So definitely much more convenient for them than having to head off big distances to water, especially for these old bulls who don't need to move with the herd, and they will move as little as they possibly can. A magnificent old fellow, those chaps. The one on the road, and he's got a huge boss. The boss is the helmet from which the horns kind of come out, and it protects the head when they're having a big fight. It's an enormous boss there. Right, we're still waiting to get into the lions. The lions are not far from here. We're just waiting for a bit of a space. So let's go back to Steph. He's got some interesting things to show you, and I will hopefully see you next time with the lions.
Well, you've come up to, you've caught Andrew and I trying to identify a bird that we don't actually know. And although it's going to be a monumental challenge to try and show you what we're experiencing at the moment, the gist of what we're trying to do is identify a tiny little bird making a funny clicking noise. Now, let's sneak up through the bushes over here. We're not sneaking up on anything big. What we are trying to do is sneak up on a bird. Before we do that, we've got some mating millipedes. And if you take millipedes are, have a look here. This female is obviously letting out some pheromones. And what's happening is she's calling in males from all over the place. But this one's already spoken for. Now, millipedes are actually hermaphroditic. They're both sexes, so depending on what stage they feel like being in for that time period, they'll actually be able to, yeah, definitely. And the transfer of the reproductive or the sperm basically is done not at the back like you traditionally know, but is done about 5 or 6 segments from the front of the head. And that's why they are wrapped around each other at the front part of these millipedes and not at the back part. So if I can show you on this one, right there, there's a gap there. Oh, there's a gap there. I'm battling to show you here, but there's a gap right there, and that's where the opening is, the reproductive opening. Going to put him back exactly where I found him. Carry on with his day. And so there, Millipede Biology 101. That bird in the meantime has managed to fly away, which, judging from the luck I've had over the last 10 minutes with birds, is not surprising. But it does leave Andrew and I free to carry on walking. Pachino John has just asked me if we get giant centipedes, or if I've seen a giant centipede. I would say the biggest, I wouldn't call it a giant one, but the biggest one that you get out here is about this long, which is about a foot, maybe just less than a foot, and about as thick as my thumb, which is this thick. Difficult to give you. So about that thick, about as thick as my thumb, and about that long. And they'll come out here in about January, February, when everything's nice and wet and rotting already with the heat and the moisture that's available in our wet season. So they're not giants. I mean, they're not as big as my arm and hunt elephant, but they definitely are big. I'm forcing, let me move this for Andrew to get over this big stump. As you may have noticed, it's just the two of us on this walk, which makes it so special. It's quite an intimate experience going on a walk in the bush, and it's so fantastic to share it with you because it is a world first, and it's something that we're quite proud of, is this live walking safaris. Taken us many months to get right, but nevertheless. Now what I'm busy doing is walking to different termite mounds. And Kathy in New York has asked me, how long are walking safaris generally in the bush over here? Now it all depends on what type of walking safari you're doing, Kathy. If you're just going on a what we guides jokingly call a bumble walk is usually anywhere from an hour to about 2, maybe 3 hours. But you do get wilderness trails as well, where you can actually walk and sleep on the trail, walk and sleep on the trail in scenic areas or at specific locations that you want to go into. I've done both, and which one do I like the best? I suppose it all depends on where you are. I like them both equally. Bumbles are equally as fun as wilderness trails. They each have their downsides. For instance, bumbles have an ending after 3 hours or an hour, and wilderness trails can sometimes be quite difficult. They can be quite a challenge. But yeah, they each have their benefits far outweigh their negatives. Now, I mentioned a bit earlier that we are heading from one termite mound to another. Got another big termite mound here in the middle of this monkey thorn thicket. And you can see how these termites have really cleared this area over the dry season. Oh, look at this. Only about 10% of this termite mound actually sticks out of the ground. Now let me go and give you an idea. Andrew is standing at the edge of the termite mound. I'm going to walk to the center of the termite mound. Give you an idea of how big this termite mound actually is. This is the middle of the termite mound. Where you standing is the end of the termite mound, and what you can actually see is only about 10% of the total size of this thing. So no wonder they've managed to clear the grass away almost completely. And what they do that for is they grow fungus on the grass, and then they eat the fungus. And the termite mound is actually just one massive air conditioning unit or greenhouse. Got noises happening off to our right hand side. I don't think anything to be concerned about. What I will do is I see another big termite mound, like one that you can actually come and join me on rather than just watching me climb. Let's go and stand up there so we can see what's making this noise. Lots of elephant dung around, lots of good leafy trees to eat. Whoa, whoa, go, 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 go. If you saw the position that Andrew bent in to get you that shot and to keep me in shot, it deserves a hand clap, absolutely. He bent almost completely backwards. Now, we're heading to this termite mound here because it's nice and flat on the top, and it also gives us a chance to invite you to join me at the top of a termite mound and to scan the area around us. Now, as you can see, because the terrain is fairly flat, we don't actually see too far, but it does give us a height advantage, and that not only helps with being able to look at the bush, but it also helps with being able to hear and get a direction of where certain sounds are coming from. And that's basically what I wanted to do, was just take some time to listen to the bush and listen what that noise is that's coming from there. Now, I know that you know that James is waiting to get into a lion sighting, and I also know that James has potentially mentioned that we were tracking some lions this morning, and Ramey has wanted to know if a male lion being injured would in any way change its behavior or its demeanor if we had to walk into it on foot. And yes, absolutely, Ramey. There's a few things that change lion behavior. One is being injured, as you quite rightly guessed. The second one is being protective of young or females in a male lion's case, or females in a male lion's case. And another one is food. Lions will protect food from us. Now, I had a tracker many years ago, a gentleman who's unfortunately passed away now, a very close friend of mine, Richard in Duban, who remembers distinctly his grandfather and father going out on foraging, on scavenging journeys to lion in this area. He lived in this area, where they took at least 10 people to go and get meat from a fresh lion kill. So when the herd guys come back and said they'd seen lions on a zebra or wildebeest or buffalo, at least 10 people would go out, chase the lions off, collect some meat, and then come back to camp, leaving the rest of the carcass for the lions. And that's how they used to get meat. Obviously, it's easier when you don't have rifles and vehicles to scavenge rather than hunt your own, especially if you've got to run through the bush with spears and things. So isn't that interesting? But yeah, 10 people, the point I'm trying to make is 10 people or more to chase lions off of a kill, not less than that thing. Now, James is with those lions, and we're going to send you back to James. Enjoy. I'm jealous.
What a wonderful way for you to join us. The beady eye of a Birmingham male lion staring straight down the barrel of the camera just before it goes to sleep. Now, these male lions, there are 4 of them here. 2 of them we can see, obviously. One lying in a position that can only be described as ungraceful, and the other just in front of him. And then the others, there's another 2 sort of in the bush off to the side, and you can't really see them. Have you got them there, Brian? You can just kind of see tawny hair in the bushes. Now, they will probably lie here, I suspect, for much of the rest of the day, and I think this is where they were calling from last night, when we heard them shouting as the sun set yesterday evening after those magnificent storms of rain. I think this is precisely where they were. Maybe a little bit, maybe slightly further to the east of where they are now, but they certainly haven't moved a great deal. They look well fed, they look very healthy, and I'm just sad that they won't, I don't think they're even going to lift their heads while we're sitting here. And it does interest me, I think that other male, oh, here, one has put his head up. Brian, let me move forward a bit for you. I'm just going to quickly talk on the radio. Well, here we go. High action at the lion sighting. Lions, of course, do a great deal with not much, but it is so impressive to see a large male lion sitting up and standing because their size is so vast. So that chap there that you can see just sort of the back of him there, his magnificent head that comes through the bush. He's having a bit of a graze on the grass, which is not unusual, totally like a domestic animal that sometimes eats grass to line the stomach. They're not feeling so well, or just sometimes to just line the stomach if they're perhaps needing to be a bit more regular than they are. But he stands at the shoulder, probably almost 4 feet, in fact probably at least 4 feet, so pretty tall, and they weigh, like I say, when these guys are fully grown, they're not fully grown yet, when they're at full mass, these fellows will weigh probably 440 pounds. Now, we've had a long discussion, as you know, about lifespan of cats. And the cats, these lions will be lucky to make it past their 12th birthdays. Because they're a coalition of 5, they might live a bit longer than that. And Acadia, you've made a wonderful kind of point that tigers can live up to 26 years in the wild. So that would definitely make them by far the longest living big cat. There's no record of a lion living anything like that long, nor a leopard, nor a cheetah as far as I'm aware. And Patricia, you've asked an interesting question that I don't think has a simple answer. Well, it does have a simple answer, but it does bring into question where that answer comes from. So, you have said, oh, back to sleep. You've said, what kills a lion in captivity? Why do they only live for 20 years? I'm just trying to hide from the sun here. What kills a lion in captivity if in the absence of other predators? And the simple answer is old age. That is what kills them. Well, what is old age? And a lot of people don't realize this, but in basic terms, what happens is that when your cells replicate each other, and I don't know how much biology you remember, but within your cell, in very simple strokes, you've got long strands of DNA, and for your cell to copy, those strands of DNA must be copied, and your body makes slight errors when it copies the DNA, and especially on the ends. The ends of the strands tend to have errors more than the middles. Now, as those errors multiply, so the effects on your ability to be as young and frivolous as you once were, so that ability disappears. So old age, basically, there are probably many other contributing factors, but is your body making mistakes, that copying system, those errors multiplying on top of each other again and again until, your legs don't work quite as well as they used to work. You get a bit stiffer, your hip probably may need to be replaced every so often, and that's mainly because of the errors that your body is making in the replication of its DNA. So that's what old age is for a lion like this. So even in captivity, with the best medical help in the world, just like with human beings, a lion will eventually die of old age if it's in captivity. And their lifespan, remember also that none of these animals out here, or very few of them, the elephants being the notable exception, and the buffalo, are able to live beyond breeding age. They're simply not designed to do it. There's no evolutionary reason for a lion that is beyond breeding age to survive in the wild, just kind of using up resources if it's not going to be leaving offspring. So these lions, once they get beyond a certain point, so unlike a human being, so a human female who will go into menopause what roughly, when is it, 45 to 50 years old, somewhere around there. And then have a very lengthy life afterwards, quite comfortably, without medical help, all things being equal. A lion, as soon as they stop breeding, when they get beyond that breeding age, they decline very rapidly indeed, very fast, and same with a lioness. And so even in captivity that will be the case. They will very quickly get old and die if they can't breed anymore. I hope that answers your question, Patricia. You can spend a little bit more time with these lions. I know that it's not particularly exciting to have them lying about here, but it is nice to see them. All right, so BJ Price, you've done a bit of research on Down syndrome, and Down syndrome, we had a question about it in lions. Down syndrome occurs on the 21st chromosome in human beings, apparently, and lions only have 19 chromosomes. I don't think, BJ, that necessarily means that it couldn't happen on another chromosome in lions, something similar. But, yeah, so it does happen apparently with a misreplication on the I think it's an extra 21st chromosome, if I'm not mistaken, with human beings. I think, like I say, you'll find that if there is that kind of a replication in many animals, and certainly perhaps on other chromosomes in human beings, what happens is that the fetus will not carry to term, and the same probably happens with lions. Right, on that note, Steph apparently has a fascinating tree to show you, a dead one, so there must be something truly fascinating there, and you can go and pick his really substantial knowledge base around that tree, and we'll sit here and find out what else is going on in Arethusa.
Every once in a while you get offered a little bit of insight into something that at first glance seems quite trivial. But as soon as you have a look at it a little bit closer, you realize that it's anything but. And this, what I'm sitting on right here, is one of those things. This is very obviously a dead tree. A tree that was pushed over by elephants or whatever the case may be, and was lying on the ground. This is a live tree. And what's happened is this tree has just by chance germinated in the fork of the dead tree, probably due to the fact that a bird sat on the branch and dropped a seed. And as the tree's grown up, it happened to just get big enough to catch the dead stump, and is now in the process of lifting the stump up into the air. Now, if we take a step back here, you'll see what I mean. There is absolutely no way that this stump could have fallen over this. And this apple leaf is way too big. Already, it's many years for it not to have picked up this stump. I mean, it's just an absolutely fascinating story here. I know it doesn't look like much at first glance, but what you've got here is you've got a live tree that's picked up a dead tree and is busy carrying it back into the air again. Actually quite amazing. Hope you're enjoying those Birmingham boys. I'm quite jealous that you're getting to see them. Myself and James heard that they were roaring last night. We could hear them. We were making a phone call on an open area right next to the DRC where we stay, and we wondered if they were going to come in this morning, and myself and Andrew were very excited when we found those lion tracks this morning, and even more excited when we heard that they were lying just across the Arethusa boundary, and that James was on his way to show you them. I haven't seen them in what feels like months, and I'm looking forward to hearing James's recount on how big they are, what new scars they've got, are they limping, how's their condition, how has this takeover been for them? Because it's been going on for quite some time now, and as we predicted, it's been probably close to about 6 months now. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but getting there at least anyway. And very soon we're going to be seeing their first babies on the ground, and then the cycle will be complete. I'm looking forward to seeing that. But nevertheless, we're going to carry on with our walk. That is just me yakking on about my own personal preferences. And Stephen, Steve in California must be looking at the sweat beading off of my brow from this morning's activities, and has asked me how much water do we have to consume versus other animals in the bush. Now, Steve, that's a good question, and actually not as easy to answer as what you'd think it is, because we are the world's most capable endurance athletes, and over the biggest temperature range as well. And so therefore we need less water than other animals do over a bigger distance, but on a per day basis we actually need to drink a lot more than some other animals. So to give you an example, an elephant weighing 6 tons will drink 200 liters of water a day and eat a lot of green vegetation, which will also give him a lot of water. So I don't know what amount of water they get from that vegetation, but it's a lot of water on top of the 200 liters that they drink a day. Then you have your ruminants, things like impala and wildebeest, who have a digestive system that is geared to taking water out of the food that they eat, and they have to drink much, much less. In some cases, ruminants like steenbok and gemsbok or oryx don't even need to drink. Their digestive systems are so good they don't even need to drink. Me, on the other hand, out here at the temperatures that we get here, we evaporate 2 liters of water a day just by breathing and by moving normally. And generally speaking, we are drinking between, not always, some days beer and whiskey definitely substitutes the water I'm supposed to have, but we should be drinking about 4 liters of water a day. So I weigh 80 kilograms, 160 pounds, and I need to drink about 4 liters of water a day here to keep me concentrating normally and to keep me functioning and not dehydrated. Now, I hope that answers your question. I didn't give you a definitive answer there, but at least it'll help you figure out an answer all for yourself. Now, we've come down here because A, I want to see what it looks like. I haven't been here in months. And B, it's always quite an interesting area. There's always things happening around this place. Now, this is a tamboti tree just growing basically on its own. And tamboti trees are good for wood carving. Their wood is used in expensive jewelry carving. And what's immediately apparent for me on this particular piece of wood is the fact that I'm noticing borer beetle holes. Now, tamboti trees are actually toxic. Their sap is poisonous, their wood is poisonous, to the degree that even making fire with this wood will make a person like you and me sick. And yet, there's an insect that is boring into this, the larvae, which is eating the wood. And I do not know what that is. It's actually going to be very interesting for me to go home today and find out what beetles actually have larvae that can eat tamboti wood. Not only is it incredibly hard, but it is also toxic. And so me looking at this piece of wood, it's just been like a wow moment. Like, what is going on over here? You can see definitely an insect boring into that wood. Is busy. It's gone right in there. I mean, I'm not going to go and dig it open. It'll take me forever. This wood is incredibly hard. You can see my knife barely even scratches the surface, and this is just the outside bark. I haven't even gotten to the heartwood yet. But it's a lovely wood to use in wood carvings, in inlays. It's got very fine-grained texture. Nothing here that I can show you. It's very hard. Let me show you the grainy texture. So the easiest way to actually show you how fine grained this wood is to take a knife and to shave away the wood slightly, which gives it an almost polished look, and you can actually see the grain of the wood starting to come out. Now, for those of you who are interested in wood carving and woodwork, you would instantly recognize the value in having those stripy patterns in an inlay on a table or piece of jewelry. Jewelry boxes were quite often inlaid with this wood, and another reason, not only is it very beautiful, but another reason is that shavings of this wood thrown into a fire keep mosquitoes away and flies away. Very good insect repellent. And then slivers of this material, in other words, bigger slivers like that, put between clothes, keep away fish moths. So winter clothes that you store in storage, slivers of this wood that you put between your clothes will actually be a deterrent for fish moths. And it's because the wood is so toxic. Now, I always enjoy smelling this. The other word for a tamboti tree, the other common name for a tamboti tree is the African cedar. And that, I'm sure for you have cedar trees growing where you live, have an idea of what we're talking about there. Andrew trying to implore to those of you who are in the sciences, make a scratch and sniff TV screen so that you can smell what I'm smelling. And he's serving to stick his camera into a position where you could probably have seen the sun through my nostrils. Now, let's carry on. Having a look at that wood and talking about the fish moths, Siberia, our Zumi, has asked, do we get cockroaches? And yes, absolutely, we get lots of cockroaches here. We get even hard-shelled cockroaches. But before I finish answering that, I'm going to be setting a challenge here. We're going to go into the open. You're running quickly because it is a lilac-breasted roller that's going to roll for us. Come here, Andrew. Now, we're going to watch that bird quite carefully, and with the luck we've been having today, there's a good chance that that bird just flies away and never comes back. But let's see what he does. It's a lilac-breasted roller, and I'm hoping that he's going to gain some height, and he's going to show you why we call it a roller. So here he comes back. He's got some height. Busy watching him there, making a screeching noise. Definitely not a pretty sound when you look at how pretty the bird is. Now what he's doing is, there he goes, there he goes. There we go. And he goes again. And that is why we call that bird a roller. Well done, Mr. Andrew. Yay, got that done. Alrighty, well done, Andrew. Now you get a few rollers out here. You get the purple roller, which is bigger than that, and then you get the lilac-breasted roller. And then right in the north of the park, you also get broad-billed roller as well. I've had the pleasure of seeing them, and it's always a treat when you see a bird that is uncommon. For some or other odd reason, you feel like you've achieved something. Now we're quickly going to cross this drainage line, and then we're going to see what's on the other side there. Oh, here we have the first hibiscus. Now, for those of you who garden, this isn't a spectacular flower because you're used to it. But to be honest with you, it's one of the most spectacular flowers when you actually get close to looking at it. That yellow color is a common color to have out here, but have a look at that deep rose red that is on the inside of these petals. I mean, it's just an absolutely fantastic color. Almost looks like it's had red lipstick melt on the inside of it over there. Incredible. So this is the hibiscus. This is it's a hibiscus that's endemic to this area. It only grows here. And although not as showy as the tropical hibiscuses that you can now cultivate in your garden, is a pleasure to behold here. I'm still carrying on with the idea of walking from termite mound to termite mound here. I enjoy it. We haven't seen anything. Andrew and I have been waiting to see if we're going to get some mammals here, but haven't even heard anything here. Not a zebra, not a wildebeest, not even an impala. Nonetheless, we're going to keep on trying. Andrew's requested that I show him a snake this morning, so I'm busy scanning while we're busy walking. I'm busy scanning for any telltale signs. Having been quite a cold day yesterday and quite a cold night last night with the rain that we've been having, it's not an unusual it wouldn't be unusual to expect the fact that some snakes would be lying out in the open, just getting warm again, trying to increase their body temperature to a point where they can carry on to metabolize the food that they need to, or whatever they've got in their belly, or whatever fat reserves that they've got. So it's not an unusual request. A bit earlier we were asked how big millipedes can get, and this is a big one. I won't take him out, but you can have a look. I mean, he's almost as thick as my thumb. You do get them a bit thicker, and obviously about as long as my hand. So that's not quite a giant millipede, but definitely one of the bigger ones that we found out here. I wasn't going to stick my hand too deep into that cavity there. That is exactly where you can expect to find puff adders and things. So, you watched that millipede react to me just poking it by wanting to roll up, and two different Barbaras on, oh right, the purpose of the rolling, it's two different Barbaras on Twitter have asked me what the purpose is for the lilac-breasted rollers making that rolling motion that we just saw, and it's just display. They are gaudy in their colors. They've got that beautiful chest and the blue and the metallic green on their head in some places. They've got a raucous call. They love sitting in the open. And then to top it all off, this male goes and displays with this beautiful calling. He lets everybody in the area know he's going to do it, and then he does this roll. And basically a lot of birds do that as a show of fitness and a show of strength, a show of virility, and it's just a form of reproductive selection. Females will select birds on their ability to be, male birds on their ability to show how strong they are and therefore what good genes they have. And it's very common in birds, especially in areas where birds have access to a lot of food. And in particular here, they have access to a lot of food with termites. A lot of termites. You've seen all the termite mounds we've been going towards. And so these birds have enough energy spare in a day to have these massive displays. Now, I'm hearing a Klaas's cuckoo in the distance, and although there's another roller over there rolling, you get him? And there you got it. You just got the tail end of another roll over there. So now you've watched two different kinds. You've watched that one where they dive with their wings open, and then now you've just watched as they get down to the ground, they start rocking from back to forth, boom, 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 down to their perch. Nice. Now back to Klaas's cuckoo. And we're going to go and try and find this Klaas's cuckoo that is calling. It is a phenomenally pretty bird, making a noise, and I'm hoping that we can get to show it you. It's a cuckoo that has emerald iridescent green feathers on it, and well worth us trying to find. I'm hearing it calling from there. Not too far away, and because they're iridescent, you can imagine where they like to sit. They're not going to be hiding on the ground, camouflaged like a nightjar would be. They are going to be sitting in the open, in the sun, where their feathers can glitter. And that is exactly what I'm hoping that I can show you, is this absolutely beautiful green and white bird. Whew, the fly flew up my nose, terrible. All right, now we're getting close to this bird. Now what I'm going to start looking for is a tall tree that offers this bird the chance to display. Now, let's go forward a little bit. I think I see him. No, it is a hornbill, but he may have a Klaas's cuckoo next to him. It sounded like he was coming from that tree. Can you see there, Andrew? That far knobthorn there. Definitely a hornbill. Okay, now the Klaas's cuckoo has stopped calling, of course, but it's okay. Let's go down and go and have a look and see if we can get him. It's going to be a bit more difficult to find without him calling, but we're going to give it a bash nevertheless. Now we're getting to a point where you see that hornbill there. Ah, Andrew's spotted. Oh, hello.
The aerial.
That is a bark spider. What are you doing? Oh. It's an orb web spider. Andrew has just made his way around and is taking you around the tree so that he doesn't break this web. The spider is right there, looking like a piece of detritus, so that he can camouflage himself, and is quite high up. Ooh, managed to catch myself on his web. Now what I've gone and done is caught myself up in his web, exactly what we didn't want to go and do. I'm sorry, big guy. Now, he just would have gotten out of the way. He would have realized that I was a little bit too big to catch, and he just would have gotten himself out of the way. But as you can see from that very cryptically designed body, that he relies on camouflage. Now what will happen is he'll come straight down to the web and very quickly possibly even start to repair it. No, he's just come down to the middle. She actually has just come down to the middle, not he. And now has control of the web again, in which case is able to detect movement on any of the strands around the web. Beautiful. Now that Klaas's cuckoo has actually flown away, but what we are going to do is take a loop. Those rollers are going crazy, and I think what they're doing is they are fighting over a prime nesting site. Now, holes in trees, I think I've mentioned it once or twice before, are like prime real estate. They really are hotly contested, and I think what's happening here is we're seeing some rollers busy giving a display for each other or for a female. And what I want to do is get into that area so that we can potentially share that with you. The Klaas's cuckoo that we've been following seems to be moving ahead of us, and I don't want to get us into a position where we get so low that the signal dips again. So we like to just stay on this side of the hill Let's go and see if we can find this roller's nest to go and show you. I can hear them fighting in front of us. Quite an interesting question coming through while I've been walking here, Emily. You've asked me how many times will rollers roll in a display. I've seen them do it 5 or 6 times, but usually it's only around about 2 or 3 times that they roll. But it all depends on how energetic the male is feeling. Okay, that was just Andrew doing his best to impersonate an elephant. All right, let's see here. What have we got here? Ah, there we have a spotted cuckoo. And he was just busy parasitizing a nest. And that's actually very, very interesting. So we have a spotted cuckoo which has just actually parasitized the nest of a bird. And what I mean by that, there he goes and sits in the tree there. Let me just get an absolute ID on him. For those big birders out there, get ready with your screenshots. He's lying flat on the branch in that tree there. Wow, that is I'm gonna need help to identify this cuckoo, but definitely the spots on the wings, the color, the size of the bird. He's one of the larger cuckoos. I want to say great spotted cuckoo. Now what I mean by parasitize is that cuckoos don't bring up their own babies. They allow other birds to bring up their babies. And cuckoos are also very specific with the types of birds that they parasitize. There, that call, that crest should be diagnostic. It's definitely not a Jacobin cuckoo. That's the other cuckoo that has a crest. It's way too big for a Jacobin cuckoo. Has a creamy yellowish throat and breast. With those spots on the wings, I think is going to help you get an identification, or help me at least to get an identification. For those of you who are quick on the draw and can help us with the ID of this bird, you're welcome to send your answers through to the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or email the questions through to questions@wildearth, or email the answer at least to questions@wildearth.tv, and see if we can get an answer to that cuckoo. In the meantime, we're going to carry on looking for these 2 rollers that are displaying at one another. And as soon as we get the answer, I'll let everyone know what cuckoo that was. Back onto the roller theme, Barbara has just asked me, do rollers ever mess up the roll and crash into the ground? And I'm gathering, Barbara, that you've got some experience with those pigeons that roll. I think they're called rollers, rolling pigeons, who sometimes will crash into the ground if they don't come out of their roll early enough. I've never seen them crash, Barbara. I've also never found a dead roller that looks like he's crashed into the ground. I'm going to have to say no to that, but it's just in my experience that it might well be that you do find rollers that crash into the ground, or at least into trees. Okay, so we're getting this nesting tree now. I can hear the one roller busy calling above us. So let's go and sneak up on this tree and see what we can find. stepped in a hole there. Not looking where I'm walking. Janine has given us the answer to our cuckoo question, and it was right. It's the great spotted cuckoo. So well done, Janine. Thank you very much for the help on that. Great spotted cuckoo. The next question that I have for everybody is, and potentially Janine you can answer it for us again, is what birds do they parasitize? And that will allow us to find him again. Give us an idea of what bird was nesting in that tree. So what bird birds do the great spotted cuckoo parasitize? Now, that roller has gone very quiet, but I think he's nesting in this tree here. And while we wait for him to finish whatever he's doing, I think it would be a nice idea to go through to James, who has probably got something that he'd like to show you. So we'll catch up as soon as we know what these rollers are doing. See you just now.
Now I'm going to test severely Brian's skills here. I don't know if, Brian, can you pick them up at all? There's a cloud of flying termites.
Yeah.
You see them there? There you can see them, everybody. And some people might find this kind of awful, but I just really love this time of year. After the first big storm and these flying termites come out, it's the culmination of their existence, of their mound. Their colony has finally released, a bit like a Deb's ball, I suppose, if you're a human being, or some such ridiculousness. This is when the royals put on their wings, open them out, and the rest of the mound comes. I'll try and find a mound where it's actually happening. The soldiers and the workers come and they open up an entrance, and there these flying termites take away the hopes, dreams and genetics, of course, of the king and queen of that particular mound. And each of them can potentially be another king or queen of a new mound. And I just find that so exciting, that every single one of these termites that you can see in great swarms all over the place could be royal and could start another mound. These are not the fungus growing termites. They're flying all overhead. I think they're harvested termites, so they don't make the big mounds, but they certainly could become the royals of a new colony. Most of them will end up in the gullet of some kind of predator, frog, bird, something like that. I just think it's one of my favorite things to see out here. Now, of course, the termites don't always stay this size. The females get a lot bigger. And Anna-Marie, you want to know, what do they weigh? I mean, there are lots of different species of termite, of course, so it's very difficult to say what they weigh. In the big mounds, the fungus-growing termite mounds, she's about that big. I don't think she'd weigh much more than, say, 100 grams, which is in power. Now you're severely testing my ability to go into imperial. I don't know how many ounces 100 pounds is, but it's a tenth of a kilogram. Sorry, 100 grams, a tenth of a gram, so it would be. I'm not even going to attempt to work it out for you. So 100 grams, I'm sure you can figure out what that is in ounces. You know how many ounces? There we go, about 300 ounces. How do you work that out? 28 grams to the ounce. Okay, thank you, Brian. 28 grams to the ounce. So there you go. Just over 3 ounces. They're not very heavy, but she's quite big. I mean, she's a half a foot long. I don't know what the queen of those harvested termites looks like. I think she's probably a bit smaller, probably about that big, but very definitely with a hugely swollen abdomen, making eggs and eggs and eggs and eggs all day long. Whoa. That was a blister beetle that I just ducked out the way of. you don't want a blister beetle walking on you because you will become blistered. They produce a toxin called cantharidin, which blisters the skin. It was also, interestingly enough, you've probably been told this many times, used in what was supposed to be an aphrodisiac at one stage, an aphrodisiac called the Spanish fly, you may recall. I've not used it, of course, but what it does is it irritates, that cantharidin will irritate the urinary tract, and because of that people thought it was an aphrodisiac. Actually what they were doing was rendering themselves fairly infertile, I imagine. So you don't want a blister beetle walking out on you, and there are going to be lots and lots of different insects coming out now. We've just seen, Brian said, look at all the dung beetles, and they really are now starting to fly around. It's just such a special time of year, especially when we've got a bit of cloud, so a bit of shade. We're not cooking quite as we would normally. There is Uncle Steph's vehicle. And let's quickly go across to Steph to rolling lilac-breasted rollers. I'll see you now.
All right, now myself and Andrew have come right between these two rollers that we've been hunting, and while we're waiting for them to display, and of course because I want them to display, they're not going to, but while we're waiting for them to display, we've got some flowers over here which are quite nice. So not only do we have the African violet, which is right here, have a look at how pretty that is, to go with that hibiscus that we were looking at a little bit earlier. This is a fairly common plant all over the world at the moment and cultivated for gardens, but this is where it occurs naturally, the African violet. And then we have right here, we have a devil thorn, and although this also gets a nice purpley flower, by far and wide the biggest plus of this tree is the fact that it's full of saponins, and that means that you can actually wash with this tree. Have a look as I crush the leaves, that slimy, you can see there the sliminess that comes out. Hold it there, I'm just going to fetch some water out of my backpack. Actually makes it even more slimy. We've got some visitors. We've got Mr. James Henry. He's right there on walk. Hello.
Hello. Hello everybody. Andrew, you're filming Steph today. Brian is perfectly filmable.
So James is just passing over this again. While we're at it, while James is here, I just want to show you these saponins. Now I've mixed a little bit of water into this devil thorn, and you'll notice, have a look at all that. So not only does it make a fantastic shampoo and a soap, it can also be used to cure chafe when you're on a walk. Something that Andrew suffers from immensely as a punishment for him running away. Bye-bye. All right, now that is quite amazing if you think about it, the saponins that are inside of this plant. The devil's thorn, for those of you who are sitting close to information resources, and have a look at that. Incredible, eh? Now you can mix that with any number of sweet-smelling plants. I'm going to just wash it off. They actually leave your hands feeling so soft. It's actually incredible. And the local Shangaan ladies over here absolutely use this plant as to wash. Ooh, look at these flowers, are driving me insane. And I'm busy washing it off, and you can see that it washes off quite well. I've got no more slime on my hands. And it leaves your hands squeaky clean. Nice. And we've got some answers from John and Diane, who've managed to get it right for our cuckoo quiz. So that great spotted cuckoo that we managed to film there was parasitizing more than likely a starling's nest. And more than likely it would have parasitized the Burchell's starling's nest. So the biggest cuckoo in the area would have parasitized the largest starling that we have in the area, or the Burchell's starling. Isn't that fantastic? So I just want to say thank you to those of you who decided to participate in that quiz. It was actually quite nice. Learning curve for myself and for Andrew, believe it or not. You know, these things, you always get them in the beginning of the year. You know things, winter comes along and then you forget. But for myself and Andrew, that brings us to the end of our walk today. We've had a fantastic day. I know you've only joined us for half of it, but the half that we did have, I'm glad we shared so much of with you. Now, we will see you this afternoon for the Sunset Safari. I'm not too sure who's going to be on walk this afternoon. We'll bash it out over breakfast. But in any case, I'd like to say goodbye. Thank you very much. See you later.
And there is Tara's favorite animal, the warthog. Now, for those of you who haven't seen Tara, she doesn't look like a warthog at all, but these are her favorite animals, and they so seldom are this confiding with us. They so often just disappear into the bush at high speed with their little tails sticking up. And that's a sort of youngster, and then there's another adult off just to the side. We're not far from where Steph was, or is. There. Now the adults become aware of us. So let's just sit and see. We don't have long left. We've only got a few minutes left of what has been, to me, a wonderful drive. So let's just spend the last few minutes with these. Oh, there's a whole lot of them. Look at that. Oh, no, very terrified now. Off they go. Isn't that sweet? Just behind the termite mound. One of them's waiting. Let's go, we'll see if we can get a little bit closer. I think they'll run away from us. There's an impala around as well. I don't know why warthogs are so terrified of us here. You know, they'll become almost like pets. In some places they'll come onto the lawns of the lodges and they live completely happily with people. We'll just move slowly down here. Just to hoping to just roll forward a little bit. There we can get a last view of them before they may disappear. They are very, very funny. My father had a dog once who I've mentioned before called Trubshaw, a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and he resembled a warthog most closely. He definitely ate enough to be a warthog. Right, Russell in California, you wanted to know what ahe means. When I see people and I go ahe, it's basically like saying, what would you say in California? I don't know. Out here you might just say hi. Or, how's it? Which means how's it going? That's basically what it means, and that's why it's kind of a shortening of the Shangaan greeting. So formally you would say avshen, which means good morning, and then somebody else would say ahe. But you can just shout ahe across the bush, and it's a wonderful way to say hello. Right, we've reached the end of the show. Big thank you to Brian.
Thank you, James.
Have a lovely leave, Brian.
Thank you.
To Tara, of course. Louise is leaving us. She's going off to Johannesburg again. Thanks, Jerry. Thank you to Steph. And to Andrew, also going on leave. You could see how excited he was. We'll see you this afternoon at 4 o'clock. Until then, stay safe and happy. Bye-bye.